just today, or actually last night, two major issues have popped up in North Carolina. There's this so-called repeal of HB2. The state Senate, the state legislature is trying to regain some of their losses. I mean, there was a tremendous loss, economic loss, almost like economic sanctions put on from corporate America onto North Carolina. They lost a lot of money, and so they claim to have repealed. What they've repealed, the gap that is making a lot of people upset is that they're still not allowing local municipalities to make any type of protections, to pass any type of protections for the LGBTQ community over and above what the state does. So in a way, this repeal, this so-called repeal, is not really effective. It's really kind of a smoke and mirror game for them to try to get some good positive PR. That on top of Donald Trump taking the LGBTQ questions out of the census that's coming up. Right. So it really is a concerted effort, movement against the LGBT gains, the gains that have been made. And I 100% believe this is backed, at least on the executive level. It's being pushed by people like Reince Priebus, but more specifically, the vice president, Mike Pence. It would seem so. You know, he is the resident evangelical. What do you think about those?
Well, I mean, Trump, to try to act as though there's some sort of coherent philosophy is really difficult. But in terms of his rhetoric regarding LGBTQ, he was, for a Republican, pretty good, right? Yeah. Like pretty willing to at least acknowledge the existence of the community and that it had needs. And then he goes and picks Mike Pence, right, who has just this horrific career, well documented. Yeah, right. So everybody who is telling you that Trump, no, he'll be progressive in some way on this, right? No. Don't tell me, show me. Right? Yeah, and he showed you by picking Mike Pence. Even
almost in the face of his daughter, and his son-in-law, who, whatever they are, whatever the things we don't like about them, they intentionally try to block an executive order from Donald Trump that was really a draconian crackdown on LGBTQ rights. They block that, but Mike Pence is in the background steadily pushing his hyper-religious anti-LGBTQ agenda. And now, you know, he really is gaining some traction.
Well, and he's competent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he has a history of competence. I mean, competence in doing things that I
horrible things
don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But as opposed to Trump, who has a no record or record thus far,
doesn't even know how the government works.
Competence, right? If you're Trump, you don't really care about these issues. When Pence comes to you, at least you know if he says he's going to do something, it's actually going to get done. Whereas if you say you're going to repeal Obamacare, well, that's not going to happen. You can't get that through. If you say you're going to put in a ban for whatever, Muslim travel ban, whatever, you can't get that through. Pence comes to you
and said, we can do this.
He says we can do this. And you know what? He may well be able to, right? He's a guy who knows how to do it. If you're just looking for things to check off and you truly don't care, right? You truly do not have what does he care? I mean, it's very hard to believe he has an authentic, sincere sympathy or desire to improve the lives of LGBT. He just wants to get things done. He'll flip back. It's no
on any issue.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
So to the caller's question of whether or not the LGBTQ community is in a worse position, I can't answer that, right? I would really have to yield to voices and leaders of the LGBTQ community. I would say that if Mike Pence has his way, it would be worse for the LGBTQ community going forward than it was 20 years ago. There's this level of religious zealotry that is carried over in almost everything that Mike Pence does. Even with the conversation that's online today about how he will not have dinner with any woman that's not his wife by himself, or won't be in a room with a woman by himself if it's not his wife, and doesn't go to any events that serves alcohol. And, on some level, being a very traditional guy myself, on some level, I get it.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't. It's like, but the way, when you add that on top of what he's trying to do in the LGBTQ community, it's its own type of Sharia law to me. It's its own type of, women shouldn't be in public without their brother or their father, that type of thing. It's an American version of Sharia law.
Yeah, I mean that's a tricky one. I also I am part of a traditional religious community. We in Judaism we have a word for what he's describing with not being alone in the room with a woman. It's called yichud. It's not being together in a space in which something could happen, right? And it's meant to be put in as a control so as to not put yourself in a position, right? The thought is more like most people take it as to be more, oh, don't work late into the night with your female colleague and this sort of thing. In terms of like a business dinner or something like that,
Like he won't even go to lunch.
that's a pretty extreme version.
Yeah.
Well, lunch is so this is in a public space. He won't. He just
Yeah,
won't be,
like he will not have lunch.
Then no. That's,
Yeah, it's like
I'm not
it's next level. It's like
Yeah, that's
it's like
another level.
it's
Yeah.
like no. Me personally,
No.
I'm not. There's no reason for me to be somewhere with someone who's not my wife, a woman that's not my wife at 11 o'clock at night.
Behind closed doors.
Behind closed. There's but a business lunch.
No, that
like,
I'm not familiar with. I want to take it back.
That's absurd. Like,
No. If the story is if he's going to be alone with a female colleague, he'd like to keep the door open.
Right.
Like, I think that's actually a good policy.
That's not dumb. That's actually smart.
that's good.
All things considered.
Yeah, because you might not trust yourself. No, but if you're talking about you're in a public space and the woman needs to discuss business matters with you, you need to talk to her.
Or even
That's
even
pretty
if
extreme.
even if
Yeah.
and then it goes over to the conversation: can men and this is all in context of Mike Pence's religious ideology? Like, can men be friends with women? And there's this strand in conservative Christianity that really is thou dost protest too much on everything.
Yeah.
Right. It's like if you don't trust yourself, then these are the types of things that you have to do. If you're not, if you feel like you're going to that easily tempted, then these are the things that you have to do. If you feel like the only use that woman has for you is not a professional one, but a sexual one, that's a
huge
problem on you.
Oh yeah, that's a huge
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, if you're talking about situations in which you are many steps away from having a problem, right? You got to go. You got to leave the house, leave the room, go to the hotel, whatever. Right? You're talking about having dinner with somebody. It's hard to put it this way. If somebody has that religious stance, that's
their business.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But you can't be vice president.
Right.
Because part of the job, we have female
You have to
senators
interact
and
with women.
congressmen and cabinet members and whatever.
Exactly. That's the most important thing right there. Is like and I'm trying to think who said this. I think it was Jamila Lemieux on Twitter. She was like, now it makes sense why his cabinet is just so many men and few women in there. Like, if you think about the context where Mike Pence is the one who's organizing this stuff behind the background, if he doesn't feel comfortable around women, then what does that do? He gets to make these grandiose statements of, oh, I'm religiously pious enough to not have dinner with women, but yet you let that translate into not having women in your cabinet, not having women in significant positions.
Have dinner with them, you can have them in the cabinet.
Right. You don't even know them.
Part of the deal. Yeah, no, I mean, we get our freedoms mixed up here a lot, right? You have the freedom of religion. You don't have the freedom to have whatever job you want despite your religion.
Right.
I cannot be a pork food taster because I won't put pork in my mouth, right? Like, it's my freedom of religion, but if I took that job, you would fire me.
Right. You're not going to go and say, listen, give me this job.
Give me the
I
bacon
can't
rinds
eat
job.
pork. I won't eat pork, but I'm going to take this. Yeah.
It's part of the job. No, I think, and depending on how far he takes us, to brag about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if he honestly cannot be in I'll say intimate, but I just mean in sort of like in-depth conversation with a woman, then that's disqualifying.
Yeah,
it's disqualifying. Should have been disqualifying 50
and
years
then
ago.
like even alcohol, right? He's like he won't go to events that serves alcohol. How are you in Washington D.C.?
Well, no, and that's the part that does sort of. It's not real Sharia. It's the cartoon version of Sharia that like anti-Sharia people in the United States.
Yeah.
They will say that he's trying to police. People who are sort of talk about creeping Sharia sort of nonsense will say they're trying to change other people's lives, right? Not just their own.
Right.
This seems to me, if you're the vice president, you have the ability. Are you trying to ban alcohol from other people's
you're
lives?
Every event that you go to, you're either lying or you're either exaggerating, right? Because this is like something that shouldn't even came up, right?
You're displaying it.
So you're showing off. You're showing off your piety, right? So he's either forcing environments to not serve alcohol because he's there, or he's there and they serve alcohol. I don't know what's that, but you're right. It really is, to me, in a way, it's a caricature of and a dangerous one, a dangerous caricature
of religion,
of religion, trying to force other people to conform to your standards. And then, it's just, it really shapes, when you put it in context and line up who he is and the policies that he's trying to institute, the attack on the LGBTQ community, the lack of representation of women inside of the Trump administration. It really paints a picture of religious zealotry that may not be equal to that of Saudi Arabia, but it definitely has that type of overtone. And it's amazing to me that we're terrified of Sharia law, but we tolerate the same type of behaviors from Christian zealotry here in the United States. And again, and I can speak to this because I come from an extremely conservative Christian background, and the main people who are involved in the people preaching the loudest about the LGBTQ community are sometimes the ones who are right there in the LGBTQ community. They just don't want to admit it. The people who are, and you see this over and over and over again. So I don't see it as a badge of honor for you to say, oh, I refuse to have a lunch with a woman. That just means that you don't see value in that woman for anything other than sex.
No, right. Especially, I can't.
That's insane.
No, and also it's a strange, to the extent to which my religious observance is different from the people around me, that makes me a minority, and I understand that, and I grapple with that. This seems to be a refusal to admit that he is doing something that puts him in a minority, right? That it is not it's not a norm to be imposed on others. If in fact he is pressuring them not to have alcohol,
yeah, that's weird.
Right? If you are in the minority position, right, part of that is
just don't drink it.
Yeah,
right.
It's just
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Just don't drink the alcohol. Just don't have gay sex. Don't get gay married. Do you be as religiously conservative as you want to be, but stop trying to impose your expectations of your lifestyle onto someone else, especially when those are the people who can't even live up to the standards that they set for themselves.
We should boil it down somewhat to the level of politics, and I have I lived in the Midwest for 6 years or so, and I worked a little bit in organizing. And one thing that you always have to reckon with there is how well the church is organized in terms of particularly just voting and getting their people out, right? And so he is talking to a relatively, I believe, small group of people, but with a very relatively high small group of people, I think, who don't drink alcohol.
Oh, okay, yeah, that group. Yeah,
it's relatively small.
Yes, it's small.
But one, it's a very devout group of people who are likely to get out and vote.
Yeah.
And two, they're people who are respected by sort of people who are more, a little more liberal, but sort of believe in the values. Right? There's particularly coming out of Indiana, right? That's a good way to get elected is to really cue that you're part of that community. Yeah. Right. At the national level, it seems ridiculous.
Laughable. Right.
But it takes 47% to get elected president, or it did last time, right? So it's not necessarily a losing strategy.
Well, this is our vice president, guys. So long way to answer the question, but I think it paints a perfect picture of who Mike Pence really is and what he wants for America. He is one of the most extreme religious zealots in our lifetime that has held that office.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing to that question of 20 years. I, like you, I can't speak to that. What I can say is that this is real evidence that progress is not linear.
Yeah.
Right, and that goes for LGBT rights, that goes for other rights as well.
Absolutely.
Don't get complacent as part of the message, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how it compares to 20 years ago, but I know it's not a straight line
definitely.
ahead. Definitely.
It has ebbed and flowed, and we're in a season now where, you know who Mike Pence is. I don't have to explain who his past is. And if you don't, you should definitely Google. So do your Googles so that you understand who the vice president is and where he stands and his extreme beliefs with regard to the LGBTQ community.